I talk about dynamics of my family growing up quite frequently because my dad's side of the family, they were dairy farmers, central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Mom's side of the family.
You know those dudes were hard workers.
So hard working.
Yeah.
Mom's side of the family, a lot of military. Like grandfather, uncle, cousins, military. And no one ever sat me and my brother down and said, this is how you work hard. But we just watched. We just observed. And there was this standard, this expectation of if you want to succeed in life, you have to work hard. And my dad's side of the family, they'd milk those cows every morning, every night. And they were in the field 7 days a week. And I just learned from those behaviors, not by words, but through actions. So that's a responsibility I feel as a leader, not just with my family, but in business, in media, in the content I'm creating, this podcast, for example. There's this huge responsibility to be a role model and set the standard, but then hold that standard.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about the dairy, from a dairy farming perspective, as a young kid, it's not like your dad, for example, was like trying to be anything he wasn't. He was just doing him. But you're able to visibly see hard work. Like I think what's hard in this day and age, especially where I'm at in the Silicon Valley, is there are many people that work really hard, right? They're out there trying to provide for their family financially. But what I think is a superpower too as a parent is getting sweaty, getting dirty, getting that in front of the kids because they can visibly see it. When mom and dad are working on the garage, when we're all working out together, we're all doing something hard together, we're going for a hike together. I think there's something to be said about physically doing something hard because kids can actually visibly see it versus dad at work on a computer. It just doesn't hit the same. So that's something I've really had to, our kids have grown up in a way where they see people in our gym, in the garage, on the mats, constantly working hard. And that's like the standard that's been set. That's all they know is because they're surrounded by just people who are working hard physically. And you just assume that they work hard in their work too. But it's harder to see.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking back to growing up.
Yeah.
And the things I remember about my dad. My dad worked on computers. Like when he was younger, he grew up on the farm.
Right.
But he didn't pursue that career for himself. He worked in computer programming. I don't really remember much of him doing his work on his computer. What I remember is a few things. I remember him doing push-ups in the kitchen every single morning.
Yeah, he did.
I remember Saturday afternoons, him mowing the grass, coming in like covered in sweat.
Right.
And more so doing like hard physical labor, working around the house, getting back from work, and he'd come in from the gym wearing like this stringer tank top and carrying his leather lifting belt. Like I remember those moments over the sitting down and working on a computer days.
Yeah, because they just hit different, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's something I think about a lot is that as a parent, especially in the digital age, like there's no doubt most people are going to be working hard to try and provide for their family. Of course, it's just harder for the kids to see it.
Yeah.
Like I do a rowathon at the kids' school. We do a lot of stuff at the kids' school to try and embody this idea of like hard work and fitness. And when the parents get involved, it's really great because the kids see that. Like when a teacher jumps on a rower for the rowathon, dude, the kids get fired up because they want to be able to see this like effort. And the teacher's working hard all day. Like they're some of the hardest workers in the world. They have a hard job, but it's not visibly the same as seeing them on a rower.
Yeah. Big difference. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
So something you say is, I guess, some of your values: train, protect, provide.
Yeah.
I think it's a good segue coming off of, visual hard work.
Yeah.
What that means for you and how you implement that in your life: train, protect, provide.
Yeah. I mean, so, you figure for over a decade, I traveled the world. I competed in CrossFit and my goal was very specific. I wanted to be the fittest on earth. I wanted to win the CrossFit Games. Like that was the goal. And success or failure was based on my ability to do that. And, I'd compete year round. So I did this thing called the Open, then I would do a qualifier, then I would do the games. And then depending on how you did, you could represent your country in something they called, like a invitational. So I would do that year round for a while. But as I've gotten older and as I retired from the sport and I found jiu-jitsu, I've started to ask myself, what am I trying to do? What is my long-term vision? And I think it's okay to have seasons of your life Just like business needs to have like evolve or perish, so do your seasons. And it's okay to not do the same thing you were doing when you were 20. That's okay. So
there's actually a great book on that I read this past year.
Yeah.
By Dr. Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings.
Dude.
That I highly recommend.
I got to check it out because it's something I actually struggle with, if I'm being honest, from a business perspective. Like, we'll want to go out and go do something different, right? And I'll be like, oh man, I'll remember like what we were doing 10 years ago. But it's like, if we don't evolve, we're gonna be like Blockbuster and be gone.
For sure.
Right? So when I think about train, protect, provide, and what that means to me is that as I've gotten older, so I'm 38, I have 2 kids, 13, 10. What I want to do is I want to train hard so that I could protect. And when you talk about protect, there's so many ways you could talk about this. But at the baseline of everything is fitness. I don't care if you're talking about firearms, combatives, you name it. If you do not have the fitness, you cannot perform the basic tasks to protect, run, jump, climb, lift. If your daughter is running into the street, you need to have the physical fitness to go run after her. Like, period. And if necessary, maybe you need to, be able to protect from physically, like in a fight. But I'd say 99% of the time, it's actually just going to be your ability to protect physically by running, jumping, climbing, lifting. And a guy like you who trains the way you do, you never have to worry about that. You never, I guarantee you never in your lifetime will have to worry about if your daughter is running towards the street that you won't be able to catch it. Like, you will have the physical capability to be able to do those type of things. And that's important to me. If you need to lift something up, you need to jump over a fence, you could do it and I could do it. And that's important. But then there's this provide side. And I think this provide side is super important. I train to provide means to me that when I train, I show up better for those that are around me. I show up as a better leader. I show up as a better husband. I show up, and because of that, I probably will make more financially because I'm going to show up better at work. Financially, I could provide more because I'm going to be in a better mind space. I'm going to be able to overcome these adversities in the gym. They're going to help me at work. But provide also, to me, probably the most important piece is experiences. Your children will grow older, and when they do, you're going to remember, I hope you remember this, they're going to come home from school or wherever they're at, and they're going to be like, Dad, let's go do the thing. Whatever that thing is. Jump on the trampoline, go play baseball, go play football, name the thing. And I always want to be the guy who says yes more than I say no. Like, you can only say no so many times before your kids stop asking. And so if I always want to be able to say yes for the rest of my life, then I need to have the fitness to be able to provide that experience as well. If my kids want to go on a hike, let's go. If they want to go do the thing, I never have to worry about my fitness to inhibit what I need or want to do. And I could provide those experiences for my kids.
Yeah, like I was telling you earlier, I was listening to your episode on Mind Pump.
Yeah.
And you broke this down, train, protect, provide. And when you started talking about provide, it really did shift my perspective on it. Because when I think of provide, or when I thought of provide, it was financial.
Right.
Like, it is my responsibility to financially provide for the family and set them up for success so we can do these things. But when you said provide as in terms of experience, that made me really think. And as I was listening to the episode, I was actually running. And the first thing I thought of, I was like, I need to get home. I need to tell Steph we're going to buy an RV. We're going to buy an RV and we're going to travel the world. I told her that. She was like, Nick, we're about to have a baby. Like,
yeah, stop listening to some of these podcasts.
She's like, just chill for a second, chill. Yeah. But it's so true that, yes, like, we can work as men or women, we can work really hard to provide for our family the financial means to be able to live the life we want.
Right.
But if we sacrifice experiences and time with our family by working to provide financially, why are we doing it? And what are we missing out on? That's just such a huge nugget for me to remember.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many ways you could take train, protect, provide, right? And each person could have their own like perspective on it. What I'm saying is that for me as a husband, as a father, those are going to be cornerstones of my training forever. It will not be a phase for me. Like, if you said, oh, I want to get a 6-pack abs because summertime's coming up, like, that's a season. You'll lose motivation after summer and you'll probably regain the body fat or get out of shape, for example. For me, when training gets hard or I'm unmotivated to go train, I remind myself, why am I training in the first place? It's so that I could always say yes. It's so that I could run, jump, climb, lift, or protect if necessary. And those are going to be cornerstones that I want to have forever. I want to be able to be the grandpa who can go play with the kids, who doesn't have to worry about, going on a hike because I can't physically make it. I just don't want that for myself or for anybody I love. And so that's my deep why of why I train. And I think the experience piece, look back on your family, man. What do you remember? You remember the experiences, the trips, the things you do, right? And I want to do more of that, not less of that, right? My dad's 70th birthday is coming up, and we're going to go kayaking and snorkeling, and we're going to get scuba certified in next week. That's what I want for myself when I'm 70, to be able to do that. And I'm training today to build a hedge so I can do that, I'm
a big fan of Jesse Itzler and following Jesse's stuff. And he's big on his calendar. He's got his big ass calendar.
The one that's this how many days you have left in your life or something like that?
He views, he'll talk about how many summers you have left in life or how many birthdays you might have. But he has this big ass calendar he creates every year. And he puts things on that he wants to do every year and even every month. So these experiences, so he forces himself. Do you and your family put these experiences that you want to create on the calendar every year? Or do you just ad hoc kind of approach them as they come up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think one of the coolest things we ever, maybe that's an exaggerated statement, but when Ava got diagnosed with leukemia, it's a 2.5-year treatment plan, followed by basically you get cured 5 years later. So after 2.5 years, you do a bunch of whatever, and then you get basically seen for the next 5 years. If the leukemia is still not present after 5 years, you're considered cured. So when she was first diagnosed, I used what you're talking about as a cherry, as a carrot. I said, listen, honey, this is going to be a little bit tough. I promise when we're done with this treatment, we are going to go have the most amazing experience of our life. Let's start talking about that. And so for the next 2 years, we started talking about what does this look like when I'm done with treatment? And, sure enough, we went to Europe for 6 weeks and we did the thing, right? And that'll be something I hope she remembers forever. And I hope the whole family does, that there was a big moment in time and we celebrated it the way we wanted to do it. And then at 5 years, we did the exact same thing. And I think that setting these benchmarks, setting these moments in time you can look back on and be like, fuck, that was a cool experience. And, we try and do that with the kids as much as possible. And I don't think it always has to, something that I got to get better about as a parent is that I place my own perspective on the kids of what they want, but really what they want is just to be around family and friends and go do things. That could be camping, that could be anything. And it doesn't have to be fancy, right? The Europe thing was fancy because it was a big deal for us, but it could just be going out camping, an hour away with friends and family. They're going to have memories from that. And I think those experiences are key, and providing those experiences and having the energy to do so is what training allows me to do.
Hey, you talked about having seasons and chapters.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that, especially with training or even business. I know there's seasons or chapters I'm going to go into that they're heavy, they're busy. Sometimes I communicate that properly with Steph and the team. Sometimes it just evolves and turns into that. But I know when I go into these, we call them sprints sometimes, they're very effective. They're not made to last forever.
Right.
And on the backside of that, we can kind of let off a little bit. But when there's momentum, you got to grab the momentum. Same with my training. I'll go into seasons of marathon prep. I'll go into seasons of strength focus blocks. And, when I go from a marathon block to more of a hybrid training focus, people will ask, why aren't you running as much? Well, it's just not the season or chapter right now.
Right.
And I think it's really important to keep things fresh and healthy and fun and energetic so that you kind of break up the monotony of the same thing all the time. Yeah. And you can really sprint to be effective.
Yeah, these micro goals, right? The macro goal is to train, protect, provide. But the micro goal might be, I'm doing a tactical games in September. I just did this little, fun throwdown with Tim. I, competed in a jiu-jitsu tournament 6 months ago. So I think it's important to set micro goals along the journey to keep you fired up. Like, dude, you did like the California Marathon?
Yeah. CIM.
Yeah. So that's an example, right? Like it gave you like this pillar and then you could train for it. And then boom, then you pick the next thing and the next thing. And I think that's important, especially for guys who are driven by like, goals and specific things, because the downside of fitness, man, is like, it's this long journey towards like this distant horizon that never seems to end, and it won't end, and it shouldn't end. Like you should want to be fit and capable for all the days of your life. And that could be overwhelming. It could be draining. But if you could set these like micro goals throughout the year or whatnot, it makes it feel more attainable.